Online missions tend to fall into 7 different categories. In the following little sections, this review will mention those categories and the challenges associated with each. Mission Type 1 of 7, Fighter versus Fighter. It can be great fun just to jump into a nimble fighter plane and skitter off into the skies looking for skilled enemy fighters that want to dance. Lax fighter versus fighter encounters constitute the pure essence of the sim, and this is the kind of exercise that most players find liberating and exciting. Strategically within Lax missions, eliminating an enemy fighter doesn't contribute directly to winning the battle. No points are won, and nobody is crowned an ace for 5 victories. But the elimination of an enemy fighter plane does take the pressure away from your teammates in bombers or otherwise attacking enemy headquarters. It can be especially useful to shoot down an enemy fighter that has climbed to a threatening altitude, because otherwise he would be likely to shoot down one or more of your bombers. Mission Type 2 of 7, Bombing Missions. Lax's suite of bomber aircraft includes heavy bombers, medium bombers, and dive bombers. All are capable of inflicting significant damage on an enemy airfield, and all must be considered an important threat if they are targeting your own HQ airfield. For example, a single B-17 or B-24 can wipe out nearly half of an airfield's defenses in a single pass if it is skillfully flown and arrives over target at an ideal bombing altitude with its full complement of bombs. However, this can be difficult because it requires a long, heavily laden flight from the most distant airfields, and the bomber is slow to climb or maneuver whenever it's so laden. Incoming fighters fly much faster than most bombers, and they can be highly motivated to overtake and shoot at them. If a bomber is damaged during the flight, it'll probably be unable to hold its altitude unless it discards some of those heavy bombs. Accordingly, it'll usually require several bombers, or several distinct bombing runs from a single bomber to destroy the enemy airfield. And as soon as a bomber takes off on an attack run, enemy fighters are likely to be alerted by their radar equipment and may launch deadly opposition. To counter these enemy fighters, Lax bombers are all equipped with defensive guns that automatically shoot at opposing aircraft within gunnery range. In general, bigger bombers have more of these guns, but they need them because they are bigger targets and they can't maneuver very well to avoid incoming bullets. The smallest bombers typically have only a tail gunner with just 1 or 2 lightweight rear-firing weapons. Accordingly, they aren't as effective at shooting down opposing fighters and must rely on a combination of defensive turning maneuvers and their defensive auto guns. Furthermore, fighters that damage bombers also weaken those defensive guns and slow the bomber down, so a damaged bomber is less able to defend itself and becomes a more attractive target to opposing fighters. It can be difficult to hit a target with a World War II-era bomb. The most accurate method is to dive almost straight down toward the target, waiting until the last possible moment before releasing the weapon and then pulling violently upward to avoid the resulting blast or crashing into the ground. To facilitate this kind of pinpoint bomb aiming, Lax includes several dive bombers that were specially built with dive brakes to help them control their speed in the downward plunge, giving the pilot more time to aim. Now, it's possible to make an effective dive bombing run in other types of aircraft, but without dive brakes, the pilot has a lot less time to aim and runs a much higher risk of crashing. Another bomb aiming method is known as level bombing. Lax provides special tools to aid in this exercise, emulating what came to be known as the Norden bomb sight in World War II. Bomber pilots can switch into map mode by pressing the M key on their keyboard, whereupon their display is replaced with a scrolling map of the terrain below. The pilot's aircraft is always located in the exact center of this map, and a moving little pipper marks the spot on the ground where a bomb would likely hit at the end of its fall sometime in the future if it were to be released immediately. Accordingly, heavy bomber pilots that approach their targets can switch into this map mode and then can just use the continuously computed impact point pipper to fly to the proper location before dropping all their bombs. If they are flying steady and level at the drop point, their bombs are likely to land within a few dozen yards of the predicted point. Accuracy decreases with altitude, and the sweet spot altitude is about 8,000 feet, because a layer of clouds can make it difficult to see the ground from any higher up. Mission Type 3 of 7, Bomber Escort Missions. Fighters can protect the bombers on their own team by flying nearby above them. From that position, they can see enemy fighters that try to attack. This is especially effective if the enemy fighters try to climb up into the bomber formation from their own airfield below, because the climb tends to slow them down, allowing the higher altitude defending bombers to dive on them from optimal positions with high speed slashing passes, zooming right back up again to high safety afterwards. Bomber pilots like to see fighters accompanying them in this way. History shows that escorted bombers were far more effective. However, both bombers and nearby fighters can suffer terribly if opposing fighters somehow get to a higher altitude before making their attack run. Accordingly, it's important for escorting fighters to keep a wary eye on the skies above and to make every attempt to draw such attackers away from the bombers. Mission type 4 of 7 is bomber intercept missions. When one or more incoming bombers target your HQ airfield, a bomber intercept mission is appropriate. In this circumstance, you take off in a heavy-hitting airplane that can climb quickly up to the bomber's altitude or higher before the bombers can arrive. Airplanes with powerful guns work best because at your first opportunity, you'll want to start shooting. Big, lumbering bombers are fairly easy to hit. They can absorb a lot of punishment before they are destroyed. Fortunately, bombers are usually so heavily loaded that even a little bit of damage can cause them to begin to lose altitude, which in turn can force them to discard some of their bombs before they can get to their target location. Every time you can weaken a bomber like this, you're giving your HQ airfield a better chance to prevail. However, all of this is vastly complicated by the defensive autogunners with which bombers are equipped. Those guns can be deadly. It is especially dangerous to try to attack a formation of bombers while slowly gaining on it from directly behind, because bomber crews generally put their best aiming crewmen into the tail gunner position on their heaviest guns. When attacking a self-defending bomber, you can maximize your odds of survival by keeping your speed very high and attacking from unpredictable angles like diving from straight above or coming in with a violent slashing vector from the side. Do not linger within range of their gun. Keep moving. It's a lot safer to make several quick, short, high-speed firing passes than to try to hammer them to death with a single sustained onslaught. It's also a good idea to attack with a wingman, so that the opposing gunners are forced to split their firepower. One airplane deserves special consideration in this context, the German V5.63 Comet. This is a tiny, rocket-powered interceptor that was specifically built for bomber intercept missions. Its rocket engine can quickly accelerate it to extreme altitudes and speeds, and its big 30mm cannon can shred even a heavy American bomber with just 2 or 3 hits. However, this airplane is very challenging because it carries only enough rocket fuel for about 7 minutes of full power flight, and it carries only enough bullets for about 10 seconds of firing. Accordingly, it has no ammo to waste. It's really only good at hitting big, fat bombers. Furthermore, this airplane requires a very complex, time-consuming process for fueling up. Use it with prudence. Mission Type 5 of 7, Defensive Combat Air Patrol. Sometimes, it makes sense just to circle your own headquarters airfield a few thousand feet up, keeping a wary eye out for incoming opposition. Ideally, your altitude will be superior to the attackers, so you can dive on them at high speed and blow them out of the sky. Another option is to circle your own airfield in a heavy bomber so that your autogunners work in harmony with your headquarters ground guns to defend your airfield. Mission Type 6 of 7, Offensive Combat Air Patrol. One of the most exciting and rewarding activities is to circle above an enemy airfield, watching for airplanes just taking off. This is dangerous if the enemy still has active anti-aircraft guns, but not all airfields are so equipped, and even headquarters airfields suffer from weak defenses if they are heavily damaged. In these circumstances, you can simply vulture the opposition while they are low, slow, and helpless. It is not uncommon to gain several quick victories, one right after another, in this circumstance. Conversely, if you are being vultured, you might consider taking off from a different airfield. Mission Type 707 we call Strafing. 7 of 7 is called Strafing. After dropping bombs and rockets, your remaining machine guns and cannons can still be used to attack enemy headquarters facilities on the ground. This is known as strafing, and some aircraft are better at it than others. In particular, fighter airplanes that are cannon equipped or that are armed with large numbers of forward-firing machine guns can devastate ground facilities. The B-25 is especially powerful in this role, as it was in World War II's Pacific Theater of Operations. Strafing an undamaged enemy headquarters airfield is extremely dangerous, however. This is best done only after the airfield has been weakened. Strafing is often used to finish off during the final phases of an attack. It can be very satisfying to shred enemy headquarters airfield facilities until a violent explosion and a fanfare of victory music declare your ultimate success. Now let's talk about quirks, oversimplifications, and shortcomings, because LAC is not without its quirks. Much of the logic has been deliberately oversimplified in order to maximize frame rate and make it easy to learn. For example, you cannot see incoming bullets, cannon shells, rockets, or missiles in any of the online multiplayer missions. In fact, although the invisible bullets coming from human opponents behave as directed by the opposing person, bullets coming from automated bots from bombers or from airfields are really just mathematical rules, like rolls of an imaginary pair of dice. The odds of taking a hit can be diminished by jinking, or by flying at extreme speeds or from bizarre angles, but you really aren't dodging bullets with that process. You're just playing the odds versus the sim's brutally simple risk mathematics. The artificial intelligence used by LAC's bots is very primitive. You'll see bots doing stupid things from time to time. The missiles that are available in offline jet-based missions are primitive too. You'll find LAC a lot more satisfying if you keep in mind that the primary focus is on online, multiplayer, World War II combat simulation. LAC's missions support a maximum of only 10 players. Although that's more than most other combat flight sims, whenever more than 10 players are connected to the server, the excess must start another mission. With just 3 online missions exposed in the menus, you might think that the entire LAC community will be limited to a total of 30 simultaneous players, but that's not the case. LAC's server divides the LAC community into as many as 32 realms, each of which can support 3 simultaneous missions, each with as many as 10 players. Each of those realms is completely isolated from the other realms. This means that the LAC community can grow to support as many as 960 simultaneous players through the current single server, but every player must choose the specific realm in which he will fly. Being new, LAC still has some bugs. When you discover one, a polite email message to webmaster@askmrwizard.com will get the attention of the developers and will likely result in a fixed version. The Linux Air Combat Community. Because Linux Air Combat is new at the time of this writing in February 2018, the community is small, and it is focused on just one server and just one realm to help users find one another within that small community. Players wishing to participate are advised to install Mumble and just to hang out in the main Mumble channel at linuxaircombat.com until somebody else shows up and says he wants to fly, or better yet, recruit a friend and get him to join in. Now that LAC design and development is finally stable, the developers plan to commence an aggressive promotional campaign aimed at getting LAC into the free software repositories for all of the major Linux distributions. At that point, it's likely that thousands of people will begin to enjoy LAC from locations all around the world. Other realms will get populated and perhaps additional LAC servers may appear. The future. Because LAC is open source software, the future is wide open, and it could be up to you. LAC has all the basics in place, and derivative works could be taken in almost any direction. Perhaps we may someday see versions of LAC that focus on the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Cold War, or one of the modern Middle East conflicts of the present day. Time and available resources from the open source community will tell.